The rolls-royce Ilkeston factory opened in 1941 to build power plants for the Merlin engine installation into the Lancaster bomber. Rolls-Royce didn't traditionally make and fit what's called the power plant to its engines. This was the responsibility of the airframe manufacturers. However, with the outbreak of the Second World War, the Ministry of Aircraft Production decided that some flexibility of aircraft design to have alternative engines was necessary. This would offset the possibility of total disruption to production from German bombing raids. The Bristol Beaufighter, with its Hercules radial engines, was chosen as the first production power plant to be built by Rolls-Royce and was converted to accept the Merlin 20 engine. This work was initially carried out at the Rolls-Royce Hucknall Flight Test Facility. At the same time, Rolls-Royce were involved with AV Row Limited at Manchester, where the twin Rolls-Royce Vulture engine bomber, appropriately named the Manchester, was having some developmental problems. Rolls-Royce had more important needs for the resources employed and decided to sideline the Vulture engine project, but provided Avro with 4 of its Merlin engines taken from the Beaufighter project to power what ultimately became known as the highly successful Avro Lancaster bomber. The Hucknall Flight Test Facility concentrated on flight development and was fully occupied as a prime source for Spitfire and Hurricane development and repair, thereby necessitating another factory being found to produce the power plant units for the Lancasters. This factory was established at nearby Ilkeston, on the east side of Ilkeston town, adjacent to the main London to Scotland Railway, and directly opposite to a significant landmark of today, that being the ski slope, which has been built on the old Cossall Colliery dirt hill. Initially, the factory was housed in an old 1800s 4-storey building previously known as Tatham's Needle Factory in Middleton Street, Ilkeston Junction. The factory was empty and bare, not having been used for 18 years. The specific task of the factory was to finalize the assembly of Merlin engines by the addition of the power plant unit. The basic Merlin engines were received in a tested condition from either Derby, Hillington, Ford's Manchester, or Packard's USA. The power plant unit comprised of cowlings, engine mountings, radiators, oil coolers, pipework, ducting, and electrical harnesses. The ground floor of the building was used for the assembly of power plants. The first floor for the manufacture of cowlings. The second floor for the manufacture and assembly of engine mountings, radiator, oil coolers, pipework, ducting, and electrical harnesses. Top floor was stores and canteen. In 1942, an adjacent but equally old 3-storey building was taken over, the top floor of which eventually became the planning and drawing office. Here we see Harold Booth, the longest-serving employee at the Ilkeston factory, visiting the mock-up department, Derby, to help him recollect those early war years by looking at a Merlin exhibition engine and photographs taken during May 1943.
What sort of features, if anything, did you add to the engine whilst you were at Ilkeston?
Well, we used to put all the auxiliary parts on. The engine used to come from Derby or Ford's, and we removed all the blanks from the exhausts and fitted the stubs. We used to fit the hydraulic pumps for the undercarriage, the instrumentation pump and the constant speed unit on the front. Oh, and also you've got your hand on the Haywood compressor, which was for the undercarriage. Everything was tested, so when we'd finished with it, with the exception of the prop, we could send it off to AV Rows at Manchester, ready for fitting on the plane.
Ready for installation?
Ready for installation, yes.
Very and see if you can recognise any of the people.
Well, I'll do my best. Oh, this was my department.
Your own department, yeah.
Yes, that's right. This is the jig on a big cast iron base, which was, what shall I say, roughly 2 tons in weight. And I recognise that man. He was from, his name was Wilkinson, I can't think of his Christian name. This was the radial drill for drilling in the mountains.
Let's carry on and have a look at some of these others, see if you recognise some of these others.
Yes, that Don Flint from Graham Garage.
Don Flint, and of course what they're doing there is just they're just finally assembling these.
That's prime assembly where it's on a dummy bulkhead, and then they're going to fit the radiator and they'll put the electrics on, ready to move to the ground floor. You see, that's Ethel Straw, remember Ethel Straw, I can't recognise who that is. That's Bernard Gunn. This is a bulkhead, and one engine faced that way and one the other. And these were fixed, you couldn't move them along. You see the...
Right, well, they fixed to this support structure for the building.
That's right.
Yeah.
The engine mountings used to come down from me, and then with the electrics and this radiator on, then they lowered the engine into it. Here, you'll probably see, here they are, lowering the engine, you see.
Yes. Okay, and of course now you can see you're starting to fit the cowlings.
That's right. Well, the cowlings came from the first floor up, and they fitted the nose cone, and then they fitted the bottom panel. Yes, well now, the new factory, when that was built, it was built to produce them quicker and on an assembly line. These travelled on wheels, and you just moved them along until they were complete. That was a central store right down the middle of the factory. There was a power plant line on either side. The store served the parts for the engines, but prior to that, these, you can see one line there, and there's another line here, and there was 2 assembly lines putting all the auxiliaries and everything on, ready to put the engine in there. But these aren't Lancasters.
What would they be?
They'd be either Lincoln or Argonauts.
Because you can tell from the type of radiating.
Oh, yes, and all cool.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for
Very
that, Carol. I'm
interesting.
sure that's been...
In 1944, the government built a new factory adjacent to the older buildings. The purpose-built facility provided increased output as the war effort was stepped up. This allowed for several Merlin production assembly lines for Lancaster, York, Lincoln, Tudor, the DC-4M for the Canadair North Star, and BOC Argonaut, and later on the Shackleton. With the advent of the jet engine, 1948 saw the end of the production line for the Merlin engine mounts, and the Ilkeston facility was progressively converted into a fabrication manufacturing unit. During the 1950s, the main emphasis of manufacture was in making jet pipes for Derwent, Nene and Avon for applications in the Seahawk, Hunter, Lightning and Comet. He also made components for the Dart, the first civil turbo propeller engine. May 1959 saw the fire at the Rolls-Royce Mount Sorrel fabrication factory in Leicestershire. Some work was transferred to the Ilkeston plant along with personnel. A considerable number of the Ilkeston people moved on to night shift to accommodate their Mount Sorrel colleagues who remained on day shift. In spite of these actions, it became necessary to increase the manufacturing work area. Additional space was acquired on Middleton Street from Mr. Fletcher Wigley. This part of the factory continued to be known as Fletcher Wigley's and mainly concentrated on the production of bypass ducts for the Conway and Spey engines. Early development work into the techniques for producing some of these components in titanium material was carried out at the Ilkeston factory, which ultimately led to a highly successful production process line being created. In the late 1960s, the Ilkeston factory became responsible for the manufacture of sound-absorbent structure to help reduce noise levels on the new RB211 engine. In addition, they produced the engine core fairings, which helped to smooth the airflow from the large fan on this engine. The honeycomb fabricated structures required the introduction of new techniques, equipment and plant. One such piece of plant was a very large vacuum furnace for brazing the acoustic structures. The Ilkeston factory had built up a healthy respect in the eyes of senior company personnel for its skills and abilities, its responsiveness to tasks and problems. No doubt its small size was a contributory factor to its renowned camaraderie within the plant. There was also an active social side, both within and outside the factory, including interdepartmental darts, dominoes, rifle, fishing and motor clubs, as well as cricket and football. A pinnacle of achievement was when the football team won the Rolls-Royce Derby Interdepartmental Claude Johnson Trophy in May 1970, the first and only time it's been won outside Derby. Thus, along with a new range of products to make, the morale was high and the future looked bright. February the 4th, 1971, was a very black day for Rolls-Royce. The company went into liquidation. It happened very suddenly. Part of the strategy by the receivers, necessary to get the company shipshape, was to rationalize its facilities. The flight test establishment at Hucknall was transferred to Filton at Bristol, which in turn provided space in the large Hucknall aircraft hangar to accommodate the Ilkeston manufacturing requirements. The company's prospects since those days have improved considerably, with developments of the RB211 engine up to the latest Trent 800. Here again we see Harold Booth being shown the Trent 800 full-weight mock-up engine, which is mounted on the wing simulator facility. Also, the latest computer aid, which is working towards less documentation in assisting the development fitters in building the engines. These, along with the wide portfolio of Rolls-Royce products, provide a firm base for the future, whilst not forgetting those dedicated efforts of the past.